Okay, and now we're hopefully live. Sorry for the technical issues. I might do a weird. Now we're live, even on the YouTube channel. That's great. Sorry for the delays, people. Just gonna double check. Yes, we are. I muted that. So for the delays, we had a bit of technical issues. We'll start over. So, welcome again to our fantastic panelists. Today we're at Sweden Game Arena's first panel during the spring of 2021. And we're going to talk about hiring game devs. And I've invited these fantastic panelists to discuss this topic. A small introduction. Maybe we'll start with Armin.
Hi everyone, I'm Armin Ibrisagic, CEO at Doublemoose Games. Started my career at Coffee Stain, worked there for about 5 years. Now been running Doublemoose for about 5 years as well. We are around 15 employees and growing.
Anna?
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Friborg. I work at Coffee Stain Studios with HR. We're about 30 employees at Coffee Stain Studios in Skövde. And I've worked here for about 6 months, so I'm new at Coffee Stain and in this industry, so I'm learning new things every day.
Nice. Johan?
Hi everyone, my name is Johan, Johan Ahlgren. I'm the CEO at Palindrome, a strategy game company based here in Skövde. We're 25 people, growing as well.
And I can maybe introduce myself first. My name is Tao, and I work as the community overlord at Sweden Game Arena. So I make these kind of events and try to make Skövde and Västra Götalandsregionen the best place to be a startup and a game studio. But today we're going to talk about hiring game devs. And we have a whole bunch of questions submitted both from the students and some extra from me. But we'll start about, I know a lot of the students might not even have applied for a job previously. So where do you start? What happens when you get the application and what's the next step? Anna?
I collect the applications and then for example, a lead, look at them, the one who's going to work together with the new person and decides who might be interesting for an interview and who are not. So it depends on what kind of position we're about to hire, which applications that are interesting. Is that a first answer or how much?
Maybe I can jump in there straight away. So usually from our point of view, it's a hire always require us to have a need, right? A need to hire someone to fill a specific role within a project or within the company. And once we identify that need, we can either look at recruitment in one of two ways. The first one is, can someone that we know or has worked with before fill this? Or could we do an internal recruitment? That's sort of the thing that most people never see. And the second one is when we can't, when we need new staff. And in general, we look at all the applications that are spontaneous, that we already have received in our inboxes or that we know are searching for it. And if we can't find someone there, we usually go out and scour the web or put up a poster. I'm not sure what the correct English word is, where we sort of ask people to apply and for them to fill that need that we're looking for. And then, of course, there's the scouting process, which Anna discussed, and that could look a bit different depending on the seniority and what kind of person you're looking for. But it's quite a long process before you even get to the part where you have the interviews and the discussions. I think that's the part where many people don't really realize that even if you have a great cover letter or a great introduction, unless you actually fill the need that you need to fill, you might not get the interview anyways.
Yeah, I just want to say that hiring juniors is the hardest because if you're hiring hiring seniors, you're making a shooter, so you find seniors that have worked on shooters previously. It's pretty easy. Hiring juniors, you need to sort of see the best in people, even though there's like usually not much you can show up as a junior. So for us, we usually the most relevant thing for juniors for us is the work test. So when we get in applications, we give them a work test, usually something specific depending on what the position, and then the most interesting work tests those we take in for an interview, and then we pick one of them.
Do all of you work with work tests, work samples type of?
It depends a little bit on where you are in production. I'd say in general, we like even before you get to the to the ask of a work test, we scour the interviews, or we scour the applications that we've already received quite a few times actually, and we look for a few things such as outstanding passion, great work ethics, a desire to grow and to use because usually there is some form of trial period or a work test, and we are looking for people that want to show off what they can, especially if there's a junior person. There isn't that much of a history that you can look at. So sure, we can do a work test. I think for programmers, for example, that is quite useless, since sure, you can look at how the code is structured, but it doesn't really give you an opinion of how fast the person works or how confident he is or she is in her ability to solve problems on a daily basis. And I think in those cases, we prefer more of a trial period.
Anna, do you have an opinion on? Have you been doing work samples during your time? Or work
No,
tests?
actually not. No. But I know we have done it, and maybe especially when it's junior positions, of course, it's easier for them to show what they are able to do and what they want to do. But we also look at ambitions, willingness, and how the person could fit in the team as well. It's very important, personality, and so.
When it comes to posting job openings, what's your experience there? I mean, are there a lot of applicants? Does it matter what you put in the job post, or is everyone applying anyways? Does it say animator? Everyone who's an animator is going to apply. What's your feeling there? Because a lot of people get a bit upset when they don't get that no or even an answer, but there might be a reason, right?
A lot of questions there. I would start with not getting an answer. It's usually when we start our company, we always try to answer everyone, no matter what. But eventually, sometimes you get such a huge volume, and you're already doing, the more people are applying, the more work you have. So you're doing like interviews every day, and then you're getting more applies while you're doing interviews. So sometimes you just don't have time to reply to all of them. Sometimes you have those open applications. Don't expect a reply on open applications, because sometimes we're not gonna check our email for like a month, and then there's a month-old application, and it's like might as well, no point in replying then. But yeah, it's great if people can reply, but don't let it affect your self-confidence if you don't get a reply.
I absolutely agree with Armin. It's in general, we are a bit hesitant of doing open applications or posting them in too many places, simply because the volume tends to get to such an extent that we simply can't handle it in a good way. I think in general, when we post a job opening, we get like 100 applications within a week or so, and just sorting through all those, it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of effort. So yeah, I'd say that if you've sent an application, haven't heard back within 2 to 3 weeks, don't expect it to happen beyond that point, and move on. And you can always be a bit cheeky and go to the office and try to find some other way inside, or but doing that can also, of course, have the opposite effect. I assume Armin will have some kind of example, but it's tenacity can be a good thing, but of course also know the limit.
I'd say send emails and do all that, be high energy, but like there's a big chance that recruiter isn't even going to be there. When I worked at Coffee Stain, we had a couple of times people knocking on the doors and everyone's like wearing a headset working. And it's like, oh, okay, so now someone has to like, open the door and like what are we going to do? Like do a spontaneous job interview for someone knocking on our door. Usually it might sound like a good idea if the right person is there at the right time, but usually it's just going to be a tired programmer who's like, why do I have to do this? So that's what I'd say.
For sure. I also think it's managing expectations. I actually had a very, very skilled intern that basically knocked on our door and said, like, I want to work here for a few months and show you guys what I got. And I was like, sure, go ahead.
Oh.
And I think that turned out great. But yeah, I can see it going the other way as well.
There are ways, I just want to jump in one more time, say that there are ways that you can show that you're motivated in other ways. For example, if you're interested in working in a company and they're working in Unreal and you've only worked in Unity, send an application anyway. Tell them you really want to work at their company. You just started downloading Unreal. You're going to look at all the tutorials over the next week and say, if you guys interview me in 2 weeks, I'm going to learn enough to do a work test and show you some knowledge at least. Now, of course, you're not going to be good. You're not going to make a good work test in 2 or 3 weeks, but you're going to show that you're motivated and eager to learn instead of just writing it in your application and saying, hey, I'm a very motivated individual.
I absolutely agree on that point, Armin. I think that modding, for example, is a good way to show that passion and that drive. I think playing all the games the studio's made is also one of those things where if you get questions on it, you can actually respond in an informed way rather than just state that I'm very passionate about games. And I always take that to heart. Like if someone can criticize my game in a way that I know it's not perfect, then I know that the person in question actually knows what they're doing and can contribute a value to our studio moving forward.
Anna, do you want people knocking on your door?
No, no, maybe not, but I agree with you. And I think you asked earlier, like if we get many applications and if people send in like from everywhere, and if it's a senior position, then we get all applications anyway. So I mean, I actually sent an answer to everyone and said like thanks but no thanks, and they appreciated it, but it might be better to focus on the jobs you really think you can get. So that's a tip.
Yeah, because do we save applications and think like, oh, I remember these applications from half a year ago, I'll go back?
Yeah, we do.
You do? Hmm?
Yeah, we do. So
no.
I think it's sort of a tiered thing, right? So in general, you have the applications that you never open because they don't. Once again, going back to the thing I talked about with, unless we have a specific need to hire someone, we're not going to go over every application. For example, if we already have a sound engineer, so we're not going to look at applications for new ones, even if those applications are great, because we simply don't have a need. But for the persons that we do have a need now or in the future, we usually save those, and especially if you've gotten to the point where you have an interview but perhaps didn't get the position for some reason, we definitely almost always come back to the person and ask like, all right, so now we have an opening. Is this something that you're still interested in? And take the dialogue from there.
See. Yeah, I can also say that I mean, I'm also working at Stanlock Studios, and we've hired during past, and I can say we have hired quite some people from our own community. And instead of coming knocking on our door, they've been very engaged in our community and played our games and been on the Discord and that sort of thing. And we also had a guy who came to one of the shows we were attending here in Skövde with Sweden Game Conference, where we had a booth. And he's like, "I love your game." And one of our designers happened to be there, and they sat chatting for 5 hours. And he ended up here. So, but that's the very dedicated, community-driven part.
Yeah, but that's an excellent example of tenacity can pay off, showing your passion, showing your interest, and actually going beyond sending a generic email that you pull from the internet and saying like, I've loved games all my life, I'd like to work with them, because everyone does that, and it's in many ways it's about standing out.
I think that's great advice, Tao, because when you're straight out of college, you usually don't have anything to set you apart from everyone else. So you need to sort of show that motivation to the one you're applying to, instead of just saying that you are. I think especially when it comes to your career, you can't let yourself be constrained by anything. You should start your morning with like those characters in Dragon Ball Z, and just like flex all your muscles and just scream at the top of your lungs until your neighbors call the police. I'm 90% serious here, but that's the energy you should come into it with, not into someone's office. I think you shouldn't be screaming there, but I think it's very important to come in with that energy and not let anything be in your way.
Yeah, I'm gonna start doing that. I mean, no, wait, we just moved to a bostadsrätt. They'll kick us out. No. Moving on then. Is there any common mistakes you see in applications that you get, maybe especially from juniors? The variations between seniors and juniors when it comes to applications differs a bit. Anna?
Maybe too much text and messy layout, and some tend to believe that a lot of text makes it look like you've done a lot, but we do see that. So try to focus on the things you really want to show us, and maybe what you want to learn. Show us that you have the eager. Armin is. I think you described it very well. I mean, we want to see what you want to do, and how you could contribute to the team as well.
Yeah, I think formatting is the absolutely number one mistake that I see a lot of times. I've had emails that had font sizes, down at 6, which are unreadable. And I'm not gonna, when I'm scrolling through my 100 applications, I'm not gonna, paste all that text to a Word format and increase the font just so I can read it. It instantly gets to the bottom of the pile, and it's very unfortunate because it might be a great person, a great resume. So I think formatting is key. I think that showcasing your strength and what you can contribute and how you feel the need that the application that the position you're applying for requires. I think those are key. Once again, I think that some of the best emails that I've seen have been very, very short because they've been to the point. I see that you're searching for a designer. I can fulfill that need for you because of this, and this, right? It doesn't need to be a very in-depth explanation of all your history and all the games and projects you've ever worked on.
I agree. Keep it short. Don't talk about, I've been wanting to make games since I was 7 years old. And my favorite game is Ocarina of Time. That's interesting. You can tell that to someone over beer. Oh, yeah, obviously. But you should, just too much text. You're reading like 10 of these a day. Sometimes people add too much other work. I know that it's different from company to company. For us, we really don't care if someone has like sold strawberries when they were a teenager over a summer, or mowed lawns for the government, or even like if you hear often that employers are interested if people have done boot camp, lumpen. So I've done the military. Because you show that you can go up early and go to work and take orders and stuff like that. I think if you can't do that, then I mean, if you can't get to work, 8 in the morning, then there's a big issue. So we sort of expect you to be able to do that. It's not something that's we're gonna be happy. Oh, how cool, this person has done boot camp or they've worked at ICA for a year. So for us, that's not interesting at all. Just keep it super simple and take away everything. Imagine you were the recruiter. What would you want to see?
Maybe sorry.
No, go ahead, Anna.
No, maybe describe that you understand what studio you're applying to, what games they do, and what you think you can do for them or so. Because some, it seems like that they have no idea who they're applying for. So, and a good cover letter can be good if it's short and describes you well.
I also think you should always play to your strengths. That's my final input. And I especially see this with artists, and I assume there will be portfolio questions later on. But showcasing stuff that's from ages ago without context is not going to give you any bonus points. Of course, you can show what you did 5 years ago as a context for where you are now and how much you've improved, and to indicate that you will continue to improve in that rate. But ultimately, we expect you to be able to deliver at a very, very high quality right now. And so what you can deliver right now is going to be the most significant thing. And that's what we want to see at the very top of your portfolio or your resume.
We have some questions from our viewers as well. And one that's also been posted previously is, what about education versus portfolio, I guess? Do we have any? We, of course, all love the University of Skövde and the education they do bring, but maybe we agree that taking your thesis is not crucial for becoming a game developer.
Yeah. So we have at Palindrome now, I think, alumni from basically all the educations in Sweden. We have from Gotland, we have from Malmö, we have from Stockholm, we have from areas around Stockholm, and also from Arctic Game Lab. And I think that the educations are not a criteria. It's sometimes a bonus, and it's sometimes, I wouldn't say a con, because I don't ever expect anyone to have not learned anything at the university. But they're not as important as you might think, but it helps us when we look at the resume. It helps us classify what sort of candidate this is. I think that the Game Assembly, for example, has very skilled hantverkare, craftsmanships. They're very, very talented and very skilled at developing strong technical programmers that can resolve technical issues very, very quickly and with great skill, while a education at the University of Skövde provides a different sort of candidate, perhaps a bit more free thinking, a bit more honed in on game design and the game concept as a whole, rather than that specific problem solving ability. So it helps us sort of define and categorize the candidate, but in general, we at the end of the day, we always look at the skills and how well the candidate itself as a person, as an individual, fulfill the need that we're looking to fill.
Any more comments on that, Armin?
No, I think you said it pretty well. For us, it's practical experience is the most important. Like you said, we love the university, don't want to say anything bad about nothing, but usually, having a bunch of courses, even if you have really good grades in a bunch of different courses, in the end, we're not going to care much about that. It's going to be about what you can do practically, and how you're like, what you've done before. I would even say that maybe it has its strengths. Again, it has its strengths that you've studied a bunch of different things in college. If you've studied, more than 3 years, you've been there 5 or 6 years, you've probably learned a lot. But if you really want to make games, you're crazy about making games, you're going to want to get a job as soon as possible, because all you want to do is make games. And so if you stay for 6 or 7 years learning all the courses in college, there are ways that can be good, but there are ways that can be seen as a bad thing as well.
I think it's about the combination, right? It's an enhancing factor that you have a great education, a great grade, but you also have to be able to show, as you say, what can you contribute in practice? What are your skills? What is the value that you add to the studio? Because we've also, most of us have studied for a number of years, but we've also had experience from the industry, and it's that combination. And one of the fallacies, I think, with studying too much, maybe if you study 5 or 6 years, that you have a great knowledge, but not the know-how. So you can't translate that knowledge into your own game design or your art or your programming, etc. Because you've never done it in practice.
It's also about what could have you done with that time otherwise. If you were there for 2 or 3 years doing something, what if you had made your own spare time project in 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is what more could you have done. It's not the courses per se, it's what you do with what you learn. I mean, they give you the basic tools, right? But now you need to make them into the best stuff you can, I'd say. And do you have any comments when it comes to education versus craftsmanship? I guess we've come to the word.
No, because I have only been here for 6 months, and I don't know anything about the educations. So I think you said it very well.
I think just a final point is that it's sometimes, especially in Sweden and locally within the region, people tend to see educations as being opposite each other. They're sort of competing for the same clientele. But that's not the case. We at Palindrome have started looking for candidates outside of Sweden, outside of the EU even, and I know Kofstein has been recruiting from outside of Sweden for a number of years now. And so educations don't compete about the positions ultimately, because the actual competition is with every university and every possible employee within our reach. And I think that's sometimes good to reflect on.
Yes, okay, let's move on. And as I said, we have a lot of questions and not that much time. We've touched upon open applications. Do we read them? Do we save them? Can I post again if you post the role I'm after? Even if it's just a week in between? Is it a thing?
Yeah, I think you could definitely post. I mean, if you get a no, you could send another application after maybe 2 or 3 months or so, provided that you have worked on the weaknesses that you had. And you don't just send the exact same application. If there's something that you think you could have done better, do it in the other applications. That's just for our company. Wait maybe 3 months or so. When it comes to all other companies except ours, I would recommend writing an auto emailing script and send them a couple of 100 emails every day
And knock on their
with
doors?
several different Proton Mail accounts, and then you can also write a script that makes new email accounts, so they can never really block all of your accounts.
That's horrible. That's a horrible idea. But I do think tenacity is good, and I don't think it will hurt you unless you really over exaggerate and do exactly what he said. So I would probably wait a week at least between each email, but I think when you're replying, you can always send another one, especially if you don't get a response, and ask like, how's it going? Did you see this? I'm really keen to work on your games and with your studio. And of course, there's a limit to how many times you can do that, but in general, I don't see any harm unless they specifically tell you that we'll get back to you later on, or it's not gonna happen this time around.
Yeah, because I mean, it's quite a difference between getting a no and getting a nothing.
Exactly.
Was it for open positions?
Yeah, I guess both. But if you you first send an open position because I really want to work at Coffee Stain, but then the week later you post a job opening for the specific role. Can I do both? Even if it's just a week in between?
Yeah, definitely. If we post a job, then you have to send it in again, I would say.
Yeah, I think that you can also take it one step further if you're really passionate about the specific studio, and maybe if you're a student, you could even send that studio an email and say like, I'm studying the first year at the University of Skövde. I'd really like to work on with your studio and on your games. What could I do to be a good candidate down the line, or could I have an internship with you in a year's time, or could you give me some feedback on my portfolio or something like that? Because that creates an incentive and an opening down the line, and usually it's not too much work for the studio to have that sort of dialogue with someone.
Have you ever hired on an open application?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't, but Coffee Stain has.
So, cool. Then let's go on to the big the topic of portfolios. I know there's a lot of questions about these, and there are a bit difference between the different roles. And do you have any takes? The word is free, as you say in Swedish.
I think people often try to wonder like how important are portfolios, or is this thing more important than this? I think coming from the university, you're coming from a place where there's a system for everything. You need to know exactly what to do to pass your courses, and you try to apply this thinking in the workplace. And I think that's you're focusing on the wrong things in that case. If you're wondering how important is a portfolio, what could you really do with that information? If we said it's very important, or it's sort of kind of important, or if we said it's a 5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 in importance, I would say you should always try to make the best portfolio regardless. Don't focus all your energy in trying to apply this university way of thinking in the working life, because it's you're going to put your energy on the wrong things.
Going with what Armin said, I think the portfolio is it's a tool for you to showcase your skills. You can showcase your skills in other ways as well, including, as we usually do, a trial period or some form of test. But it is important what you do, like the skills that you actually have and the skills that you highlight and your strengths and possible weaknesses. Those are important, but at the end of the day, as a recruiter, that's what you're trying to assess. If your portfolio is super glamorous and you've spent hundreds of hours perfecting it, that will not matter if you don't have the skills that we're looking for. The only thing you can do then is fool the recruiter, and that would not be good for anyone, because once you actually start doing the work, you will realize that you don't have the skills required, and that would be very frustrating and a bad experience for everyone.
Do we have a take on where, for whom? I mean, if I get 100 applications and there's no portfolio, like I said, the portfolio isn't always that important, but if there's 100 applications, it's gonna matter, right? To get past the first bump.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're sending an email, the portfolio is a great tool for showcasing your skills in a digital environment. But you could also send a playable game, a demo, a project that you've made. You could even ask to be able to do a work sample. You can state that I don't have a great portfolio. I haven't had the time. I'm straight out of university, but I'd love to show off my work. Do you have an asset I could create? And then I could get back to you with that asset. So I think there are lots of ways to initiate that dialogue and ask for how can I showcase my strengths and skills. Portfolio is certainly one of them, and usually the most universally used.
Does it work for all disciplines? Do you get portfolios from programmers?
Yeah.
Do you think it's the way to go, or should I more do the Johan version of "Let me show my awesomeness, please"?
I think you can do, you can send a YouTube video of like games that you've made or things like that. You can send your games as well. Some companies are just a bit careful about opening exe files from unknown people, but I mean, anything you can send. The application that's going to have the lowest chance of success is someone who is sending just, I've graduated school, no examples of any work, just like a one-page letter about themselves. Those usually don't get any reply even. So just anything that you've done, even if it's something from school in a course or something like that. But the best thing is like if you have some spare time projects or stuff like that, that's always going to set you apart from everyone else.
Absolutely. Just a pro tip concerning something these sort of projects: always provide context, because that helps us out a lot. Like if you've done this project in school and you had a specific time limit, state that limit, because a project can be great if you just spent 10 hours on it, but if you had spent 100 hours on it, it would have been not great. So providing context in these scenarios is very, very helpful for the recruiter when they're looking at it.
We had some other questions. Do you need a fancy portfolio, or can I just send you a drive link?
That works.
Yeah.
What about those fancy CVs? With all the, is it needed?
I think this goes back to what I talked about earlier. It's much better to highlight a good portfolio is one that highlights your strengths and skills. If the portfolio in itself has taken a lot of your time, then you're doing it wrong.
In some cases, usually I think the question is no, it doesn't matter, just send what you've done. But if you're doing if you're a UI designer or a UX experience designer or something like that, it might make sense to make a cool UI design for your portfolio. But usually, again, don't put all your energy into the wrong places.
So make the things you want to make at the company, not the website for your portfolio.
Yep.
Sounds reasonable. Let's see, moving on. What about what's outside of your technical competence as a animator or artist, or what else is needed? What can you do?
I think that's a really good question. I have a lot to say about that, so if it's okay that I jump in. I think it's very important, usually, especially when you're young, you sort of think that the only thing that matters is to be really good at what you do. You have a meritocratic mindset, and it is like that. I mean, of course, it's very important what you do and what you can contribute to the project. But I think it's very important, especially when you're young, to train your sort of empathetic sixth sense. And by empathy, I don't just mean being nice to people and treating everyone the way they want to be treated, because that's basic and you should have learned that in kindergarten. But what I mean is you need to have the ability to sense the mood and feelings of the group and help contribute to a positive atmosphere where everyone is comfortable and happy to go to work every day. It could be something small and simple that you did learn in kindergarten, like saying hi to everyone at work. I think that can help out a lot. The reason I bring it up, because usually it's people who are really good at what they do are usually the worst at this part. You don't want to be the artist that gives another artist shit in front of the whole team because they used one wrong tool in the wrong way. You don't want to be a programmer publicly humiliating another programmer because their code wasn't perfect, when in many cases you don't need to write perfect code, you just need to write code that works for the situation you're trying to solve. You're not going to make a better game if you give someone shit because they committed something wrong or whatever it is, but you are going to make a better game if everyone has high morale and feels like they can be themselves and they look forward to going to work every day. You are going to make a better game if you say hi to people in the morning, or you bake cookies on Sunday and you bring them in on Monday, that's a big deal. I think if you're nice and if you are good at what you do, if you have those two things, which are very rare usually, then you have infinite potential. If you're an amazing programmer and you're also fun to be around with and a genuinely good friend, you can be a goddamn heroin addict if you want to, and your friends are going to take you to rehab and let you detox in their bathtubs. So that would be my advice there.
It's a bad rehab if you need to keep them in your own bathtub. Now I can't even remember the question because you threw me off guard with the.
It was, I think, what you could do.
Oh, yeah.
Apart from
what's more than just your technical skill.
Anna, do you want to add on before I have some pointers as well?
I think I agree with Armin, for most of it at least, and and I mean it's the same as in every other job. It's about who you are and how you could fit in the team, and it's not that everyone's got to be the same, but we want someone to be able to work as a team, to be a team member. So it's important. Good question.
Yeah, I just want to also highlight that, sort of on the same track as Armin, that your value and your contribution towards the team and the project doesn't have to be within the field or the position that you're hired within. I think there's way too much focus on people being a programmer or a 2D artist or a UI artist. Ultimately, we're all game designers, and we try to make the best games possible. And if you have a subset of skills within another field, even if it's baking, which is not something you'd expect out of a game designer, maybe that can still contribute a lot of value, both on the technical level within the project, but also on the empathy level and the project management side, where, as Armin said, everyone works better if they're happy. So my tip is to learn as much as possible about all the fields of game design, everything that interests you, because in ways big or small, that could contribute to your career as well.
Cool. Now we don't have that much time left, so we're trying to keep it quite short. Internships, if there's not an internship in your education, can I still get it? And what would be required from me?
Sending an application.
That's a good start.
I know a big topic that's on Twitter from time to time nowadays is paying interns. Is that a thing you do or have done?
We do it a lot, unless it's actually part of the education and the students get paid anyways. It really depends on the length and the expectation on the intern. If you have a very junior intern that cannot contribute a lot towards the project, usually it's not going to be paid that much. If you have someone that you're feeling out because you want to hire him or her down the line, but perhaps don't have a position, or that feel have a lot of potential, I would assume that person would be paid more. It won't be as much as a full-time employee, obviously, but it should be enough to cover living expenses for the period.
Yeah, but maybe it's not something you can expect from all companies in the industry, I can say, especially in Sweden, because then we do have the interns who come from schools, which means they will have the student loan possibilities. So, I mean, that's kind of why we have the value of it, right? But when you actually do hire, then is it what's the difference between, do you do project hires or full time, or then we have this provanställning? What's that in English? What's the usual way?
Since I started, we've only hired full time with this probationary time, the provanställning. But I guess it's different in like smaller studios or new ones.
Armin, maybe you want to?
Yeah, we hire sort of the same. We never hire like a couple of months at a time. We really try to avoid that. If we hire you, then we want you there full time. for as long as you want to stay, and usually it's a 6 months probationary period, and when you've passed that, then you're part of the team, and we'll be there for you.
Yeah, I think it's a lot different for different companies, obviously, but Palindrome has had a history of growing quite aggressively, and we want to keep doing that because we want to build bigger and greater games moving forward. And it takes a lot of time and effort to hire someone. So when we do, we don't want that person to leave within a few years, especially if it's a junior, because we are investing both time, energy, and a lot of passion into that developer to make that developer great. And usually we don't see, if you're a junior straight out of school, we usually don't see your peak potential until a few years later on. And so in that case, it's especially important that we don't lose them by the time that they reach that level of seniority. So we always do the full-time hire when we can. Of course, I think in general, most Swedish studios, at least smaller ones, use the probationary period because it's a good protection both for the employee and the employer. But it's ultimately, I think it differs a lot on the studio and the position.
Yeah, I can say from our end, we tend to do the probation period, but for more senior developers that we hire, they might skip that because they're most likely leaving a full-time job already, so they want the security to be able to. It's not 6 months if it works out. It's you're here to stay, and everyone's into to make sure that happens. But we've also done project hires, but it kind of depends on when in the project you are and what type of work it is. During our the days of Battlerite, Bloodline Champions, that was some time ago. Battlerite, we had some project work done when we felt we needed to just amp up the production for a bit to add extra content. But then we also used a bit more junior, so hopefully they get some experience and have it easier to move on from that. So it differs a bit, and I know different studios does different, but I think a lot of the time we do when I invest in people we hire, it takes a lot of time to find someone and also the time we put in, just as Johan says. Any more words on that, or should we, because we're very closing in the time here. We're done? Cool. Let's see. Yes, we have gotten some questions about the pay. How does it look in the industry today, especially maybe here in Skövde then? What is to be expected of a junior developer?
I think it depends completely on what company you're applying to. Newly started student companies probably it's going to be as low as possible, while established companies usually pay you a bit more. But I would say, I think most companies are between like 20 and 25 for the first for juniors.
And juniors then we meet without any experience previously, I would say here in this context. Do we have a confirmation on that ish wage gap?
I think it sounds about right. It really also depends on the position and the expectations, right? The expectations from the studio side has to be aligned with the salary. I think that's how you know you have a good balance. And usually with juniors, you also have a pretty rapid increase the first few years, especially if you start low, such as around 2022. So I think that if you have a good employer, they will have a great dialogue with you on how to get up to those levels.
See. Okay, let's go. We've gotten quite a lot of questions from a specific discipline, and that is game writers. What is your take on game writers and their ability to get a job in the industry today and future?
I think it's really rough, but we are actually taking game writers. I'm going to jump in and say that. We're taking interns now for a new very experimental project that we have, where we're going to use we're working on a medieval type game where you play as a king, and we're going to use AI generated voice acting to simulate your subjects that are going to talk to you, and we need game writers to sort of write the strings of text that we're going to use for the game. So yeah, now's your chance.
I love that you hijacked the entire stream to pitch your game. Oh my! So I think twofold, right? I think that there definitely will be more game writing positions in the future. I think we also will hire a few in the near future because we have the need for production writers, which I think is different than what people usually expect from the game writing position in general. But secondly, I think that this goes back to what I talked about earlier. If you have a subset of skills that can enhance your work as a game writer, that will help you tremendously. If you're an artist with a passion for storytelling, if you're a programmer that loves to read fantasy, if you're a game writer that has dabbled into programming or art or game design, because there is, especially with smaller companies, there's a great problem if you require someone else to get your work in the game. Right. So as soon as you breach that barrier and say like, all right, so I can actually write a good story and I can implement it into your game engine, and you can test it on an end user, on a player, and they will say that, all right, this was actually pretty good. Right. Then you've breached so many barriers, which I typically see with the game writers or writers in general that don't have experience in game design or in game engines.
Yeah, what type of work? You said it's usually not what they might expect as a game writer. What would you say is the type of work they'll get?
So production writers, I think, have a lot easier time, but it's also a lot more difficult because, for example, we are in a stage where we have a project that has been established. There is a world, there is a setting, there is a coherent style, both thematically, visually, and narratively. And what we need is someone to do more of that, right? So if we were to take a famous example where you have the Warhammer IP, which we have nothing to do with, and clarifying. So if you have the Warhammer IP, that style has been established. But if you're making a game, you might need, filler content, which is thousands and thousands of lines in that specific style. And that usually takes a lot of effort and time. So the writers that can emulate other people's style will have a lot of an easier time. And usually this is something that writers are very bad at because they learn from an early age to find their own voice, find their own style. And so it's a very different skill set than being just a good writer.
We have another discipline that's also a bit on the rougher path, maybe, and that's musician. People who make music. How does that look within your studios, and how do you work with that?
We outsource our music. We have an audio engineer that once again dabbles in music and audio and voiceover productions, but that has also the entire skill set of a programmer. So it's extremely convenient for us because he can both make temporary sound effects, implement those into the engine to ensure that everything works, and then he can also work with an outsourcing studio for the full production of all the music assets.
Musician is hard because usually one is enough for a whole game. We have one musician that we've worked with for years, for like almost ever since we started the studio, and he makes all of our music and all of our sounds as well. So
in-house or?
Well, he's no, he's not in-house. He has his own music production company, and we just order whatever we need from him.
And you need both sound and music.
Yep.
Anna, do you have sound and music in your studio, or?
Just sound designer in-house.
Yeah, and I have to agree. At Stanlock, we also only have sound in-house, and the musicians are a freelancer or a close friend, but who also does other things on the side. So yeah, when it comes to, I said Skövde, you can expect if there's someone who works as a musician within a games company, they also do something else. It might just be sound, but it could also be, as you say, programming or another role for all the smaller studios.
You would need maybe like at least 20 employees or 30 to have full-time one sound designer, and then in the end there's not going to be any work left for him. So it's I think maybe it's most viable to start your own production and work with as many indies as possible.
Yes, okay. We're see if we have some last questions that might go. Do you do your own QA or outsource QA? So quality assurance testing.
We have our own one person.
We differentiates a little bit depending on where in the production we are. I think in general, QA is extremely undervalued and underrated. And I think that if you are a good QA manager or a good QA leader, that will be a very, very attractive quality for the games industry as a whole moving forward. So if you think that is fun, I definitely think there's great value in specializing and becoming good at it. It's not something that people talk about in general. There are a lot of outsourcing companies that do QA. We worked on a few as well, and general publishers have their own QA, but those tend to be of varying quality. So I think that's all I'm going to say on that subject.
Yeah, okay, so final questions. Networking, does it matter? Should you network? Have you hired through networking? Did you hire your friends from school?
I think it's really important, but it's also one of those things that I'm not sure if giving the advice that networking is the most important thing in the world is always good, because if you're going to network, it sort of needs to be in a organic, normal way, so that it isn't obvious that what you're trying to get a job from the person you're talking to. Oftentimes when I'm at like game dev expos and like GDC and stuff like that, you sometimes see students who are just like come up to you and shake your hand, say what they do, and give you a card with where it says like name, game designer, and tell you, you get in touch with me if you're looking for game designers. That never works, because no one's gonna email all the game. I haven't even seen what you've done. It's that part doesn't work. But there are some situations where networking has been super successful for us. The publisher we're working with right now used to work with porting. They did ports, and then they built up some money. Then they started publishing projects, and they came to us when they wanted to publish their first project because we were such good friends. I happened to meet them at a GDC. I was promoting Goat Simulator. I was wearing a goat suit. They thought it was really funny. We grabbed some burritos after that and just hung out, took some beers afterwards, became friends, and now we're working together because we're good friends, and we want to make each other money. That's, I think, the best way to network. But it has to be natural. It never works if it's obvious that I'm gonna become your friend so I can use you in the future. People usually don't respond very well to that. I think just try to be genuine, try to actually make friends, and maybe 5 or 10 years in the future, like in this case, it actually became something that we could work with professionally.
Yeah, I think networking in general is good. Of course, it's difficult in COVID times. But as for getting a job in networking, I think networking is one of the many tools in the toolbox. And if you're good at it and you like it and you're proficient with it, go ahead and network as much as you want to. It's not going to hurt you unless you do it incredibly bad. But it's not in any way the only way to do it. And I think that if you make good games and you make games that you like and that has some form of traction, and then you utilize that to get a job in the industry, I think that's probably going to be the easier option.
Usually your friends right now that you're studying with, maybe they're going to be the ones that get you a job in the future in 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 years.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, okay, final wrap up. Trying to find a good question here. Okay, what do we see in the future when it comes to getting a job in game deving? Will we be screaming for? What are we lacking? Who will have it easier? Who will have it worse?
Senior developers.
Yeah, become a senior developer. Great advice from Johan.
Then everyone would want to hire you. No, joking aside, I think producers, QA managers, I think entrepreneurs are highly sought after. There's a lot of heat and traction on smaller studios that are being bought up across the globe. I think getting an entry-level job in the industry has never been simpler. I think there's a lot of growth in also across the board within the entire sector, especially in Sweden. So I think also the industry at large is broadening a bit. Historically, it's been very focused on a handful of companies, at least within Sweden. But I think that there will be more space to try out new things and start new kind of studios. And new kinds of studios are starting already that perhaps focus in game writing and visual novels and that sort of thing that Sweden has historically been very, very bad at. So I think it's a great time to be a game developer and make good games, show people the games, and you should be successful. Knock on wood.
Final words, Armin?
I think it's hard to say. What should you do right now to help a career for the future? I think regardless of what happens to the games industry, we're still going to need the same type of people, maybe a little bit more producers and stuff like that, like Johan says, because the industry is maturing a little bit. We're getting medium-sized studios. We're adding a layer of the producers and maybe QA and stuff like that you wouldn't have with a 5-person studio or a 10-person studio. But in the end, I think it's hard to say when you're a junior, you haven't worked in the industry. Usually people don't get a producer or a lead job as their first job out of college. So I think your plan should still be the same. Your plan should just be to get a job, see what your strengths are, and try to grow into those strengths.
Anna, do you have any final words or any trends you see on what people are looking for?
I mean, you definitely know this industry better than I will do, probably, because that's not really my job. But we have discussed a bit, and maybe the one who's like beside or crossover the more classic areas, like tech artists and animators. That's what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I can see that trend as well. Tech artists are very high demand right now, and animators as well. And I think, yeah, I mean, the whole industry is screaming for talent at the moment. So, I mean, there's lack of everything, especially in the senior level. But I'd say it's a bit worse on the tech art and animator side right now, and also, of course, programmers. But that's also a question we actually had. A programmer or a developer from another industry, would that be interesting?
Yeah,
absolutely. It's all about the skill set. It's not about the education and previous experiences. It's what can you do right now to fill the specific needs that we need in production or in the studio.
About 2 years ago, we hired a programmer that had never worked with games before, and it's gone great. He was a good programmer, so.
He was.
Yeah, we have as well.
Went south. Oh, sorry. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think we also have, but we also work a lot with servers and stuff, so it's not really sure it has to be game stuff, because if you know backend stuff, it works well even if you don't do games. So I think that definitely works very well, especially maybe for programmers, as we talked about. It might be a bit trickier if you're used to animate movies, because it's a whole different type of technique and stuff like that. But I think you can transfer if you need to.
I think actually the biggest sort of caveat on that is that the salary expectations, looking at the programmer that works within IT or within engineering going to games, it's usually a pretty steep drop.
can imagine that as well, especially if you've been in a bigger company.
Yeah.
A lot of the IT companies you see are multi-office type of things, so they work in another different level. And that's why we see people like Anna coming more and more into the industry, I'd say, with our maturing and growing, and we need to organize ourselves closer to more and more management as we grow, and I think that's great. And with that, I think we have a wrap up, and I want to thank everyone for joining for this panel. And of course, we hope to be able to host the next one. Is planned to be on March 24th, and that topic I think would be on running successful projects, because you're starting to look into getting Game Project 2 ready and set up. And we hope to see you back then. So thanks for now. Bye,
Thanks.
Thanks
people.
for having us.
Thank you.
And off.